This poem is Catrin, which is one of the several poems that deals with personal relationships. It's a bit more autobiographical than some of the others. And for the context, all you need to know about this one is that Gillian Clarke is a modern poet. She's still writing. She lives in Wales. And that her poetry is connected to relationships. She often writes about relationships. And also that Catrin in the poem is her daughter. So the context for this one is that it's a personal poem, that it's autobiographical, and that she's actually writing about her own relationship with her daughter. The story of the poem is about love, but also conflict. So it's about the relationships between the mother and her daughter in this poem, between Gillian Clarke and Catrin, her daughter. But it's also about all mothers and their growing children and how they love each other, but also how they fall out. So it's very universal as well as being personal. It's written in free verse, so there's no rules about line lengths or stanza lengths or rhyme. And the style is a first-person narrative written to the child, so it's addressed in the second person to the child. We see that the name of the poem is the name of the daughter, Catrin, but it's the only time that she mentions the daughter's name, and that's what makes the poem quite universal. It could be any mother talking to any child once you get past the title. The first stanza is about the writer's memories of giving birth. It's about how monotonous early labour is, the waiting for it to get going, and then the later struggle and pain as labour really does get going. The first stanza is also written in the past tense, and that shows that it's a memory, whereas the second stanza, we'll see, is written in the present tense to show it's what's going on in their life right now, as Catrin is a teenager. So it begins, "I can remember you, child, as I stood in a hot white room at the window, watching the people and cars taking turn at the traffic lights." And you can see there's quite a lot of alliteration in this opening sentence, and it slows the pace down, reflecting the mother's experience of that early labour, that boring. She's standing in a room, in a hospital presumably, because it's a white room, so it suggests that it's very clean and clinical, and she's watching the traffic. And the taking turn at the traffic lights makes me think perhaps of things stopping and starting, of a contraction going and then going away again. And it's also quite cooperative. People taking turns is sharing. It's polite, which kind of contrasts with the conflict that comes in later into the poem. She goes on to say, "I can remember you," so we've got that little anaphora there. "I can remember you, our first fierce confrontation, the tight red rope of love which we both fought over." And again the alliteration draws our attention to this very important phrase, our first fierce confrontation. The idea that the very first time they met, before they even met, there was a struggle between the two of them as Mum is labouring to give birth to this child. It's almost like they're already struggling to be apart. The tight red rope of love is that metaphor, isn't it, which refers to the umbilical cord. But it's also, of course, a more extended metaphor to say that there's a connection between mums and their children. Even when they're no longer inside them, there's that strong connection. And red, of course, links to passion, but also, as you'll see in a moment, it also connects to anger and to danger. So you've got love and passion connected here, but it's all and those very positive emotions, but also it's a warning sign, isn't it? And the juxtaposition there between confrontation and love, our first fierce confrontation, the tight red rope of love, they're there together, juxtaposed to show us about this ongoing theme really of love and struggle, love and confrontation between the mum and her daughter. She goes on to say, "It was," and I think she means the room where she's giving birth, "it was a square environmental blank, disinfected of paintings or toys. I wrote all over the walls with my words, coloured the clean squares with the wild, tender circles of our struggle to become separate. We want, we shouted, to be two, to be ourselves. And you can see over here that I've put blue circles around words here that are linked to conflict, because it really does. There's so many words here connected with conflict, with struggle, with aggression. And here you've got how clean squares become wild circles, and the contrast there sums up their struggle. I think the wild circles are almost her screaming and shouting as she colours the walls with her words. And you've got the oxymoron there, haven't you? Wild and tender. At the same time, it's both wild and it's also kind and loving. So you've got this oxymoronic phrasing here, which again sums up their relationship. Then we move into the second stanza, which is in the present tense. Still I am fighting you off, instead of I can remember what you were like, you were this, it was that. She says she's in the present tense now. And she's focusing on their relationship and conflicts now that Catrin is a teenager. They're still tightly bonded, they still love each other, but there's still conflict between them, and there's still a sense that they are fighting to be separate. There's still a struggle to become separate. And teenagers have to go through that, don't they? We do argue with our parents a lot in adolescence, and that's because it's part of a process of growing away from our parents and becoming individual adults who are able to manage on their own. So we'll go on then. So it says, neither won nor lost the struggle in the glass tank, clouded with feelings which changed us both. And the glass tank makes us think of those little hospital cots, but I also wonder whether perhaps it's an incubator, one of those special cots that poorly babies go into in hospital. So perhaps it was a difficult birth. Perhaps mum's feelings were even more clouded by the fact that this brand new baby isn't 100% well, although clearly she becomes well. Neither of them won or lost. Again, we've got that word struggle. But again, birth is linked to conflict and competition. They wanted to be apart, now they are apart. But straight away there's a sort of competitive nature to it. She goes on to say, still I am fighting you off. As you stand there with your straight, strong, long brown hair and your rosy, defiant glare, and we can hear the internal rhyme, can't we? And the sibilance, which are creating a real sense of rhythm and emphasis here. And it speeds it up, and it gives it passion and power, like the argument coming from Catrin, who wants a little bit extra freedom. And we've got this link here with the straight, strong, long brown hair, and also the word rosy, making us think of ropes again, the red rope. And rosy sounds like a positive word, doesn't it? We think of roses as pretty and rosy as being pink, but we then find out it's rosy, defiant glare, so she's got a red face because she's angry. And again you've got that contrast between the love and the positive feelings and the anger and the struggle between the mother and her daughter. And she goes on, bringing up from the heart's pool a sort of idea of an unplumbable depths of love. This mother loves her daughter so much there's no bottom to it somehow. Bringing up from the heart's pool that old rope, and that of course is the umbilical cord, but also that invisible connection between mother and daughter. Trailing love and conflict, and there's that oxymoronic phrase which sums up their relationship and the whole poem. As you ask, may you skate in the dark for one more hour. Now, skating in the dark is literally a bit dangerous. You can't necessarily see the road, or the ice, whatever you're skating on, you're going to fall. You're more likely to fall, so it's literally dangerous. But also, we talk about skating on thin ice, and we're talking about taking risks, which again is something that teenagers do as part of growing up. It's important that you do take risks, but parents have an instinct to protect. So here I've said that Catrin doesn't realise the dangers of this request, A mother still wants to protect her, and that creates conflict. And many of you will have had that experience where you're trying to do more exciting things and you want to go out with different people and go to different places, and your parents are reluctant to let you go because they want to keep you safe. So that's the poem. I think it goes well, as I've said here. It goes really well with both Poppy's and Cousin Kate. Cousin Kate is about families. It's about conflict between families. It's about jealousy, and I think that fits well with Catrin. It goes particularly well with Poppy's, which is about growing up, and about having to let your child go, sometimes into dangerous circumstances. Both Poppy's and Catrin are written by modern female poets as well, so there's a strong connection there. And some people might like to compare it to The Extract and the Prelude, because they're both autobiographical. Both autobiographical, but also universal. So they also have that sense that it could be anybody realising their place in the world, in the case of The Extract, or having those arguments with and love for their family in this poem. And deeply personal, very much about a personal experience or a personal relationship. And they're both, Extract and this poem, are also about memories and how our memories shape us and change us as people. So that's Catrin.